Oh, yeah.
What's going on, people? What's going on, people? My name's Timmy Joe, making videos about computers. There go my glasses. On the internet, and today on the program, we got glasses on, so don't be worried about it. A little bit of a different video, because I was getting all set for a big benchmark video with the MSI Gaming X Trio 2070 Super. Thanks to MSI for loaning me this card. We're going to do a comparison, this versus the 5700 XT Anniversary Edition. And I was doing my benchmarks. Actually, we had my benchmarks mostly completed when I watched, what's that guy, Sid from Toy Story? He has a tech channel. He was talking about some hot news, or, sorry, Brett from UFD Tech. Shave your head and that's what's gonna happen. Anyways, I know it was for something or whatever, some charity. Good on you, buddy. Anyways, he was explaining that they released a new NVIDIA driver. And I was like, no, because there's a bunch of promises that come along with this NVIDIA driver, and I had just received this the other day, installed the driver, and did all my, actually half my benchmarks last week. And then, of course, they released a driver update that makes all my stuff invalid because they literally promised performance increases in games that I had benchmarked. So I was like, guess I gotta redo my work. And then when I downloaded the driver, so I went from driver 431.6, which came in on July 29th, to driver 436.02, which came out on August 20th, right when in between me doing the benchmarks, of course. They promised all these new features like beta support for GPU integer scaling, an ultra low latency mode, freestyle sharpen filter, G-Sync compatible monitors, some extra ones of those. But in addition to those features, which I don't know about any of them except for the ultra low latency mode, because of course the the AMD drivers have a new thing like that too. So we can look at that low latency thing, and there are better people to do that than me. But in the comparison video, maybe the NVIDIA's versus the AMD, the Radeon drivers. But what I was more concerned with was they literally said they had an increase in performance in Apex Legends, Battlefield 5, Forza Horizon 4, and in World War Z, which I don't have, so you're not going to see much about that today. Sorry if you play that game. But I was like, well, I got to redo all my tests. So I got into it, and yeah, literally discovered that there is some pretty decent increases in FPS. I thought this would make a pretty good video, because not only that, but there were some decreases in some of the games I had already benchmarked as well, interestingly enough. So, and it's not always what it seems. It's not always free FPS, but I guess it's not going to be too big a deal once you check things out. So, yeah, MSI, this will be we'll do a comparison versus the XT, and of course, they don't care. They make AMD video cards as well. I'm sure the 2070 Super is going to be a better card, but whether or not it's a better value, we'll have to figure that out. But I will say that there is an MSI contest coming up, and yeah, I've got one of these, but it's not this. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to show. Anyways, there's a contest coming up in September where I've partnered with MSI to do a whole Radeon AMD giveaway. And you can check it out on Twitter. There's a little bit of information there, and I'll be posting some more stuff about it soon. But I thought I'd give you a little sneak peek. I got a whole bunch of hardware from MSI and AMD. It's going to be pretty cool to check out, so look forward to that. So why don't we head over to VoiceOver TJ, Timmy Joe, in VoiceOver mode, and we'll check out a whole laundry list of benchmarks with the 2070 Super before versus after with this new driver, and see, was there really an increase in performance, or maybe a decrease in performance in some games that they didn't really mention? Huh? Let's check it out. All right, starting off with Apex Legends, and we see here this game is supposed to be affected by the driver update for sure, and boy howdy was it ever. This is a very strong showing for this driver update. It got me excited to see such an increase in frames, especially on a game I play a lot, bringing you very close to that 144 frames a second sweet spot for high refresh rate, and even the 1% lows and 0.1% lows went up, which is crazy. Hard to do a proper benchmark run on this. You always do something different in an online game like this, but for sure, like on an average of 3 runs on each driver, that's the results they came up with, and very good strong showing. 26 frames were gained on average to start. So this is a very good showing, but does it continue? Well, Battlefield 5, this is just 7 frames a second I got on my normal single player run, which is not exactly the most impressive, but I mean, free frames are free frames, and there was definitely an increase, so you cannot complain about that at all. Moving on to Strange Brigade, a game that was supposed to be very much affected as well, and I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, who cares? Like, I guess the 1% lows are, but it's like all above 100 frames a second. It's a Vulkan title. I don't see exactly why we'd be too worried about this increase in frames, but it's 7 frames on average up. Can't complain about free performance. Moving on to Forza Horizon 4, and another game that was pretty well affected by the driver, and you see the 1% lows went up quite as well. So, free frames are wonderful, and you can't complain too much on a driving game where you're going to want some fast action, fast movements, and stuff like that. So very good. Moving on to Far Cry 5. This game's not on the list of games that was supposed to be affected, but I saw an increase of 7 frames a second. So, I mean, you can't complain about free frames, right? Try to do the same benchmark. Some of this might be margin of error, but there was definitely some sort of increase. Now, moving on to Witcher 3, I'm going to call that within margin of error, depending on what was going on, but I would say pretty much nothing to worry about there. Then Shadow of the Tomb Raider, pretty much exactly the same results on both sides, so I didn't see any measurable increase there. And then moving on to Sniper Elite, I thought maybe this was a DirectX 12, increase or something like that, but no, pretty much the same results. Went up a little bit on the 1% lows there, but that might be some sort of margin of error or task running in the background on my computer or something. So nothing to worry about too much there. Wolfenstein Youngblood, the game everyone loves, that, every time I bring it up, people just yell at me in the comments. I'm going to call this margin of error as well. I mean, went up a little bit, but nothing too crazy. So I don't know. It's not a Vulkan thing compared to the Strange Brigade thing. I don't know. Fortnite, identical. Average frames is like almost impossible to happen, but it did. And we saw the 1% lows, but who knows? That might be a server thing, or who knows? So this is pretty much nil. Nothing to worry about. So here's where things start to get a little bit fuzzy. The Division 2 DirectX 12 title. I'm on DirectX 12, and I saw a frame decrease. For sure. And I double and triple checked. Try to go the same route every time, and I'm not online or anything like that. And I definitely saw a decrease in frames here. So this is where I started to scratch my head and wonder, is this really a good thing for every game? And then moving on to Metro Exodus again. Saw a pretty steep decrease in the performance, and I pretty much do the same thing every time in this game. And this is a game that's, it's got ray tracing in it, so it's going to hurt the performance even more. So none of that stuff's on here, but I don't really know what the difference was there. And then lastly, Crysis 3. This is a game I always throw in there because it's kind of a representation of an older game that, they're not going to optimize for. And whatever they did with that driver definitely decreased the performance in this game considerably across the board. 1% lows on everything. I mean, losing 11 frames a second on a game that's you should be getting over 100 frames a second at, but and now all of a sudden you're getting 60, 68. That's where I started scratching my head and knew I had to do a video on this thing. So I'll throw myself back to the studio, and thanks for listening to me talk. Interesting stuff, ain't it? I mean, did you ever think a driver could do that much difference, that much good? Like, usually they promise that the driver is going to give increases, and then, Steve from Hardware Unboxed does a big, 25 game benchmark and figures out that, it's within margin of error. But there literally is such a difference in Apex Legends, which is a happy thing for me because that's a 165 hertz monitor, and that brings you so much closer with that card to like that sweet spot, the 144 hertz at least, 144 frames a second. So things are even more buttery smooth on that monitor, which is pretty cool. But then, there's the opposite side of that coin where, of course, they're not going to advertise this, but there's obviously some games that are affected by the changes that they made negatively. Which, I mean, a few of those games, not too big a deal, but Metro Exodus seemed to go down, at least a fair bit, and that's a game that RTX, so if you turn that on, that's a performance hit, and then now all of a sudden the new driver's got a performance hit. I didn't go too far into it, like, I don't think it's going to affect it too much, like, that's not an online game or anything like that, but, I mean, the degradation in Crysis has me wondering, like, what legacy games is it really, like, that was a huge 11 frames a second. And I double and triple checked it. Like, I don't understand why it had such a hit on the performance of that game when that game is not optimized for at all anymore, obviously, because you think that with modern hardware you'd be getting way better performance, but it's like I'm sure that if they sat down and worked some driver stuff out for that game, they could make it better. But on both AMD is really bad for that game, but in NVIDIA hardware, you don't get much better performance over, the last generation or the generation before that. Like a 980 Ti will do pretty damn good at 1440p in that game. I bet it gets pretty close to the performance you were seeing with the 2070 Super. So weird stuff there. But I just wanted to kind of make this video to show that it's not always what it seems. And although, yes, there was definitely some increases in performance for certain video games, there are possibly even more games out there than the ones I benchmarked where it negatively affected that. And I'd like to see, if you have one of these cards, let me know if you see a decrease in performance or an increase in performance. Maybe there's some other games out there that it does a marginal increase. I'd love to know in the comments below. Not that a lot of you guys out there have NVIDIA, super cards, I'm sure, because, my audience is more lower end AMD stuff, it kind of seems like. But, I'm sure there's a few of you out there, and I'd love to know, and maybe this thing will gain some traction for the algorithm because the driver actually may change. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm at WatchTimmyJoe, Instagram and Twitter, and let me know in the comments below if you have any negative or positive impacts with this new driver. And we'll look at some of the features versus the 5700 XT in the upcoming video. I've got most of the benchmarks done now, so it should be coming out soon. And then, in September, there is a huge giveaway happening that me and the MSI have collaborated with. So it should be really fun to do a build with some high-end stuff with them, and I get to do some giveaway stuff with them. That's going to be really fun. Follow me on Twitter to get more information on that sooner than later, but you'll see stuff. I put it on the YouTube community thing as well, but things aren't always what they seem. And you know what? The driver update, I'm surprised it was that big of a gap in Apex Legends. That's really cool. But on the flip side, some games are negatively affected for sure. I'm sure. I don't know. Anyways, I'm sure Steve from Hardware Unboxed will do a whole video on it tomorrow. So, at WatchTimmyJoe, Instagram and Twitter, thank you for watching, and look forward to videos, things coming up soon. I'll talk to you soon.